CloudDB, shaping your new normal.
And please contact me, Cannell@thtechnology.com, or DM me on Twitter @thtechnology. If you have any questions at any time about grids or any other Apex material, I'd love to help out. Welcome, and I hope you're enjoying the Apex virtual tour. Hopefully next year we'll be back in person. This is Great Grids, the Sane way. Very important. Support your sponsors. CloudDB, Francesco does an amazing job at everything he does. Support your user groups, whichever one you belong to. Branch out if you travel. I believe user groups are the best, sanest, most effective way to learn, meet new people, network, and further your career. Can't ask for more than that. And if you like doing things, get involved with your user groups, want to do more, check out the Oracle Groundbreakers program or the ACE program. It may be going through a change right now, but I'm sure it'll survive in some form. There's a whole bunch of us out there that won't let go. So consider supporting all your sponsors for this great event. I'm Karen Cannell, TH Technology. I've been working with Apex since its HTML beginnings, and actually a little bit before that even. I'm an engineer, but all that means is I like to work with stuff, and I love working with Oracle tools, figuring out the latest and greatest, and Apex is what most of my clients are using right now. I am ODTUG Vice President. I'm ODTUG is like my home group. I am an ACE director, and I love giving back on these things. I swim a lot, and I'm actually in the Virgin Islands right now. I was actually here today in my happy place, and I had a little remora that followed me around in the ocean for an hour. This is the first time that's happened. He actually bit me a few times, and I guess he's trying to clean me. But it was a blast. But I stay sane. And why is that important? With all the COVID, and hopefully Omicron doesn't become anything big, it's real important that we all find our happy place, stay safe, stay vigilant, stay sane, vaccinate, whatever works for you. Because I want to see all of you at KScope 22 in June of next year. Actually, abstracts are open right now. They closed December 6th. The US has, as of this moment, open travel to everyone as long as you're vaccinated, and they cover the exceptions with testing. So submit, we would love to see you. If not, I'll come see you guys next year. And this is where I'd like to ask about you. What's your Apex experience? What versions, what grid experience? Are there any damn again JavaScript experts out there? So I have to make assumptions. Grids came about in Apex 5.1 and higher, so I'm assuming you're on that version, and you're pretty good, but there's some things you're just not comfortable with grids, and you're not exactly a JavaScript expert. So this is why we use grids and how to get around those things that aren't exactly a declarative. Apex gives us a big sandbox to play in, and they give us a bunch of tools. And every version, they give us new tools and more tools, and so we can go build the Taj Mahal declaratively. You don't have to use those tools. You can do whatever you want to put code in an Apex page. We give you lots and lots of leeway, any kind of JavaScript, PL SQL generating, HTML, however you want to do that. If you go outside of the sandbox, it's kind of like being in the desert. You're not supported. So you can do that. But remember, when you upgrade, and I got bit by something with grids where I customize a template, well, in 21.2, I can't do it that way. So it's going to be a griefer when we upgrade. So this is a reminder. Apex is a low-code development platform. Use it. That said, interactive grid customizations leave low code behind. So we want everyone to stay sane as a developer. So let's talk about how we do that. Well, why grids to start with that? We've had tabular forms, and I'm sure some of you have been around since tabular forms, and we were kind of like, yeah, about tabular forms. Not perhaps our favorite, especially if you needed cascading list of values, columns conditional on other columns in this row or in another row. It was a griefer. So we said, okay, what can you do, guys? And they came up with interactive reports. And we said, yeah, that's great, but we want them editable. Can't we have editable interactive reports? And they said, okay, we'll give you interactive grids. We took all the things that we liked about interactive reports and tabular forms and all the features we asked for, and the Apex team came up with interactive grids. So we said, hey, that's great, but wait a minute, grids don't have all the declarative settings that interactive reports do. All those things in the action menu, I want to turn them off with a click declaratively, and that's not there. And the Apex team came back and said, oh, don't worry, we provided you with JavaScript APIs. And we were not so pleased. And the Apex team said, hey, well, here's the direction. We had interactive reports, tabular forms. We're replacing those with grids. And so now tabular forms are legacy. In the future, interactive reports will be legacy. And I need to reassure you that that will not happen until interactive grids can do absolutely everything that interactive reports do. And you may have noticed classic reports are still around. They have a great use case in customized layouts and applying CSS there. I don't think interactive reports are going away anywhere soon, but consider using grids because there's a lot more flexibility there once you understand how to work with it. So again, the word that what you're replacing all our stuff with interactive grids and JavaScript APIs for customizations. Yeah, right. Okay. So we need to learn about interactive grids. And if you're like me, I like knowing the underpinnings. And the best way to learn that about grids, and yes, this is still a classic from 2016. John Snyder's, who started writing these modules, explains the interactive grid architecture. And if you're a geek like me and you like learning about this stuff, then this interactive grid under the hood is the way to go. If you just want to know what you need to know, this overview should show it. Everything in blue here is a widget, a JavaScript widget. Now, interactive grids are the first major Apex module that the Apex team has written in JavaScript, and they use the jQuery engine for this. They're now writing more JavaScript widgets. I'm sure they're using different, I'm not sure they're continuing with the jQuery stuff, but this is what we have. It's not going to change anytime soon. And what's important here is everything in blue is a widget. Everything, and notice the OJ chart is dotted because that was written by the Oracle Jet team. We now have Oracle Jet JavaScript extension toolkit charts in interactive grids and now also in interactive reports. The flexibility of these widgets means we can integrate them more easily, and we will see more JavaScript widgets going forward from the Apex team, I guarantee. So lots of widgets. And if you really want some good reading, you can actually read the JavaScript code, go out there and read the libraries. It's really interesting. Yes, I am a geek. Everything that's a mod in yellow is a module. So apex.item, every column in an interactive grid is an apex.item instance. Pretty cool. That means everything we do with an apex item, we can do with an interactive grid column. That is huge flexibility and makes things a lot easier. Everything in green is an instance of that module. So every column is an instance of an apex item. Pretty cool. Now, every time you see Apex, the word model in relation with an interactive grid, think data, data set. With tabular forms, we had the PL SQL arrays. Well, the model in JavaScript is the JavaScript equivalent of that. So we have the grid model, that's your tabular view of the data, if you will. Group by would be the group by model of the view. Detail model, icon model, if you use icon view. Chart will have a different, a different looking data model. So that's what that's all about. As I said, read more, and the link is in the slides. I can get you the slides. Just email me or DM me. There's lots of settings and configurations. Reminder that this is a low-code platform, even though these customizations are not declarative. But when you can, do it declarative first. It only makes sense. It's a low-code platform. We want to make our lives easier when the next upgrade comes around, and they upgrade pretty much every year now. So there are lots of declarative settings, edit, enabled or not, allowed operations. I'm not going to read all of these for you. Edit authorizations, really handy. Set up a role, add, update, delete. Lazy loading, if you haven't played with that, give it a try. Doesn't work for all my stuff, but it does work in nice cases, in certain cases. Pagination is different. We don't have 25 pagination sets, but try it out and see how it works. And toolbar, we do have some declarative settings, turn it on and off, but not all the ones we're used to. And a few settings here, but not as many. Column headings, lots of stuff. But not everything is declarative, as we have complained about. Turning a column header off, for example, adding or removing toolbar buttons or actions in the actions menu, adding, removing action menu or row action menu options. And Apex team came back and said, you just do code in the new column advanced JavaScript area, or in the grid advanced JavaScript area, or in the page advanced JavaScript area. And if you're like me and with more PL SQL background than a JavaScript background, when this first came out, I was like, what the heck? But don't worry, if I can do it, you can do it. And remember that most grids are a combination of declarative and customizations, and we don't have to write every customization from scratch. Just for example, you can really simplify your grid here. If you don't need the search, if it's a short grid and you just have a few rows and they just need to be able to filter for a few numbers and save or refresh, you can do that easily. You can pop that filter button up to the top. You can add a custom help button. You can wrap things if you want. This is just wrapped due to the size of the screen, the window. You can add to the row actions menu. You can move your delete bar up, add your refresh bar. You can declare to say add employee. You can even do things like rework the whole actions menu. And this example is right out of John Snyder's Interactive Grid Cookbook, where there are lots of examples. If you need to do a lot of customizations, or even a few that you think are a little different, I encourage you to look at the examples in the Interactive Grid Cookbook. And because I thought, no, these don't apply to me. It's, who would ever do that? And lo and behold, I ended up saying, aha, they did this here. And I can use that same principle to do what I need to do for my business requirements. So don't knock it, take a look at it. There's really neat stuff in there, and including this actions menu. This star rating is not a customization. It is an item. And I think now the star rating is an item type. It used to be an item plugin, but every column in an interactive grid is an instance of Apex item. So that's not a customization there. That's a standard grid thing. So lots of options. Now consider you give 5 developers the same, build me a grid on the emp dev tables, editable grid. I guarantee you're going to get 5 different grids from those same 5 developers. And if they're in the same app, and it's 5 different grids, different layout, different pagination, different names for your column headings for the same data element, that's not good. To prevent this, if you have a team of 2 even, you need to communicate and share, because things need to look the same for end users so they know what they're getting. And even if you're a team of 1, in 5 different days, you could, in different moods or different work settings, produce 5 different grids for the same table or dev tables. And that's a problem. And in 5 different apps, you might do it 5 different ways. Maybe you have to do it 5 different ways for 5 different use cases. But if you have standards, it makes it easier for you as a developer, because you know what to do when without guessing. You use fewer brain cells, you get more sleep, and you maintain more sanity. You can have different appearance, different grid functions, different column names, different pagination. I mentioned some of these. And this stuff happens if you don't have standards and adhere to them. You never, ever, ever want your end users using your app saying, oh, this is so hard, I can't figure it out, it's no good. Because then, yeah, you just never want that to happen. That Apex stuff, it's no good. We never want that to happen. So user experience, #1 reason to standardize your grids. We want our end users happy. We want them sane. Users happy are our reputation as developers. We want to standardize for our development and maintenance to make our lives easier. It's easier and faster to do what I do on a day-to-day basis if I know exactly what I'm going to do, and this is the pattern, and then that frees my brain cells up for the more creative stuff that they pay me for. And developer sanity, exactly that. I talked about this: button names, placement, actions, simple add row versus add employee or add department, text versus icons or both. And is the icon on the left of the button or the right of the button? Which pagination format are you using? Are you using scrolling or not? The number of rows displayed in your grid. Do you use shading or not? These are all things to think about. And the Apex team put a lot of thought into, okay, here's the interactive grid layout. Likely you've had to do some customizations theme-wise for your applications. We'll put that same thought into, this is what our grids look like, and then stick with it. And as I said, as a developer, then there's no guessing, no reinventing the wheel. I have directions. And this is where you can really use your JavaScript experts and make everyone's life easier. And because I'm talking about standards, I want to just put this slide in here that says, standards, yes, have them, use them, and let everyone know about them, and yes, really use them. Okay. Grid standards, we've talked about it. Use the same template, name the columns the same, put columns in the same order, make the same views available to all end users, or conditionally, maybe only admins get certain things. Lots to think about. Now, how to standardize grids, Karen? This is what we came for, how to stay sane. And I say, here's the magic wand. And wouldn't it be wonderful if there was one, but there isn't. It takes a lot of work. And I can't give you that magic wand because I don't know what your needs are, what your business requirements are, what your end users expect, what features they need, what they don't need. Turn off things they don't need. If we give end users a button or an option, their job is to use it. If they shouldn't be using it, take it away from them. Don't confuse them. Things I've seen done: a cheat sheet of grid settings and config settings. You can build one grid and copy it around. You can have a standard starter application that has, these are maybe our 3 sets of grids that we use. This is our standard editable. This is our standard non-editable. You can build a plugin with your configurations. You can use a plugin. And there are several plugins out there that make doing the customizations to interactive grids easier, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. What I'm going to show you a lot of is using a common configuration file. So let's take a look. I know, enough talk. Let's go look at some stuff. So this application is just, I've kind of been building on it since I started working with interactive grids, and there's a lot in it. If anybody wants it, there's a whole set here of different customizations. We're going to work on the standardized area. And what I first want to show you is that case of 5 different grids and on the same table. And this first person, or maybe it's me in 5 different moods, you know, took all the standards. That's your default, and we all have 18 rows, so we don't have to worry too much. But let's say this person, or this, maybe I have 5 different personas, really cut things down. That you only have 18 rows, you don't need a search bar, but I'm not going to give you that much real estate, so you're going to have to scroll, add emp, name, position, supervisor, hire date. Well, is it emp number? Is it employee number? Is it employee, or is it name, salary, commission? Spell them all out. Yes, yes, nope. What the heck? Nope, not consistent. So yes, no column, didn't even align it the same. Null is different. Yeah. So anyhow, I didn't give directions. So that's got some of both. Yeah, and then this person or this persona, you know, really like this different region template, and you know, name versus employee, empnum, or employee number. You know, you need to standardize on these things. It looks sloppy when you don't. And even, you know, emp number, should it even be visible? So stuff happens. So not good. So true story. I was working for a client. We're doing a major upgrade of 30 to 35 30 to 35 Apex applications from Apex 4.1. Lots of tabular form use there. Interactive grids didn't exist yet until to Apex 18.1. I think it was 18.2 by the time they finally deployed. Now the plan was to upgrade all tabular forms. And we had a team in India, a team in the US, and you know, we had meetings and we had code reviews, and we kind of split up the apps. And we were halfway through, and I did a code review, and we got to the tabular form, and I said, wait a minute, what's that tabular form doing there? And the developer said, Karen, I cannot put tabular forms in front of my developers, my end users. There is no delete button for them to delete their rows. They have the checkbox, but they have no delete button. I cannot put interactive grids in front of my end users. Therefore, they still have tabular forms. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I said, you realize that the delete button is in the row actions menu, delete row. And then he said, no, that's too many clicks. I cannot do that. It's not intuitive. And I said, okay, wait a minute. And so what I did, and then because I had read the interactive grid blogs, I'd read a lot of Hard Like Software. I looked at the interactive grid tool, interactive grid cookbook. I knew that I could do stuff like, where's my attributes? I could, and now if you're watching closely here, I'm going to steal from text some code from my help text. This is not a production ready app. It is a demo ready app, because there's no way that I am going to type that code. But I learned some stuff by you know, following blogs and reading the interactive grid cookbook, and I said, I bet I can move that button right back up on the toolbar form. And this is by default, this leave page, because I have made changes in this grid. And yes, that's okay. So now I have an add employee button. I have a delete selected rows button, makes it clear that they have to select the row first. And all this button does is that same action as the row action delete. They still have to say save or refresh and cancel all that to undo it. But this was acceptable. This was acceptable. Now, do I want everyone in, all 10 or 12 developers writing this much JavaScript every time? Sorry for the click there. No, I don't want that many developers doing this. So how to handle this? And just quite quickly, I replaced the toolbar. So there's a toolbar data. I'm defining it in this function. Group together, 2 controls, a search field and a button. Next, I have another set of controls. It's a button, add employee, and the action is row add row, a default action. Align end of the toolbar, I have my delete selected rows, which is a selection delete button. I could have labeled it anything I wanted here. My save button with the default save action, didn't want to change that. I pulled refresh cancel up because that was in the row action as well, and that would have been a click. And we always want to be able to reset the report if we allow users to change column order, etc. So I don't want everybody writing it. They don't need to write it because there's a better way. So again, because I was reading stuff, what I figured out is, and this is one of those things, a global configuration file. Well, how does that work? What I'm going to do is come up with some simple default settings that we want to use all the time. And to do this, I created a global configuration file. And what I did is I started with someone else's and I customized it. So this that you're seeing in Visual Studio Code right here is, the details of, there's this THTech iGrid app.com and iGrid config. And then I just define a big long config function. So I'm saying for default grid view options, sticky footer false. And I'm doing things like if the region with this static ID has a class sequence number, then add the row header sequence. If it has class no reorder, then the default grid view option of reorder columns is false. That turns off reordering columns. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. But what I did is a few classes, filter only grid. And just like I did with the delete, this add, delete, save that's in here is just what I showed you, that config toolbar data, exact same code. All this is doing is say, if I add that class, then use this, apply this configuration. So how do I do that actually in my app? Well, there's in my app, and see if I can find this in the right place, in my JavaScript files, I need to include that file, the master file. And that's my fave icon. Where's my JavaScript files? And there it is. It's actually uploaded in this application. And there you go. So now, let's edit my page. File included. Instead of dumping a lot of code, here's my grid, in the advanced JavaScript region of my interactive grid. So it's in the attributes area, advanced JavaScript initialization code. I just put the reference to the function. Now again, it is not production ready to have your cheat sheet of code in the email from address. It's just handy for demonstrations. So I put that in the JavaScript initialization code. And then I'm going to put the class name, apply the class name to the grid itself. CSS classes, add del save, and now watch this. This is really cool. So now my grid is that add, delete, save, delete and save pushed up on the toolbar. So I don't have to have my entire team coding JavaScript to do their configurations. I only need to do it once, put it in a configuration file, and then share that configuration file across all the apps that it applies to. All my users need to do is add a reference to the file, include the file in the app, add the reference to the initialization code here, and add CSS classes. I also have the other filter only grid. I can apply that one. And with a simple class change, I have a whole different look to my grid. This is what people should be doing with their grids. This is the sane way to approach things. Don't be dumping code in every grid that you need to customize. Now, there's some things that you need to watch out for. And let me try and do this on this next page. So I'm gonna do that same customization here. It might be done already in terms of including the, yep, this is here. So now I'm going to add that same add, delete, save. Well, let's do two, because you know what just one will do. Let's do two. Now, two different configurations there. What's going to happen with both of those? Any guesses? Any guesses? I know what's going to happen because I wrote the code. We're only going to get the last one through the file. If we go back to look at the file, filter only grid, it did exactly what I told it to. It applied one class, it did that, and then it did the next one. And because they're mutually exclusive, I only got the last one. So in that case, it doesn't work, but I can add these two, and let's get rid of, let's just do add, delete, save, and then do sequence number and no reorder. Those do work together. So you just have to be smart. So now I have my sequence number and I am not able to reorder my columns anymore. It just doesn't happen. So now be careful, because I said use those declarative settings first, right? So let's go up here. Let's go back to the top of my attributes, and maybe I want to turn well, let's just turn, I defined a toolbar, right? So I don't need toolbar on anymore. Whereas it's down a little bit more. Nope, don't want to do that. Roll back, roll back, roll back. I can turn edit off. I can change my pagination, won't do anything. Let's just show you edit off first. My delete button, what happened to it? Well, it's no longer an editable grid. You don't need a delete button. So your declarative settings work in conjunction with your customizations, and you have to be smart about how you do that. Now, someone could come in here and I'm like, no toolbar, sorry, ain't happening. And in that case, what are we going to get? No toolbar. The declarative settings will apply on top of what your customizations are. So beware of that, and just educate people. I still have my sequence number. It's still, things work in combination, so be smart about that. We also can standardize columns as well. Do we need to sum employee number ever, or freeze the column? Do we need all these options on every column? Probably not. Some of them you may want, some of them, some of you may not. Now, for each column, we'll do ename to start. It gives me some declarative stuff here. Column filter, enable users to sort. Now, as soon as I turn sort off, control aggregate goes away. I don't want users to hide employee name ever. So watch what happens here. They can't, they can still aggregate and they can freeze, but that's not what I intended. Same thing with emp now. I don't want them to do anything here. And I think I have my no reorder applied already. So let's go back into emp now. And you'll see another one of my little cheat sheet things. Again, this is not the thing to do in production. This is for demonstration purposes. Again, by reading examples, by reading the JavaScript APIs, I learned that I can say no header activate on the default grid column options, and that will indeed make it so there's no header activation at all. And I can, if I want, then apply that to all of these columns. The one I really like to get rid of a lot is freeze. So, and the way Apex allows us to do this now is you can do things like this and come down, and whatever your setting is, apply it this way. Now you may not want to apply that to all columns, but it makes it easier. And again, standardize what you want done on, on your columns, so that users are used to seeing the same thing. One more thing I want to show you about grids before we jump back to some slides. So I'm sure your brain is spinning because I've showed you a lot of different things that you can do, and you just have to work. This is what we're hired for, to design the app that suits your end users' needs the best. And part of that work is figuring out what's the best grid configuration to suit their needs. And it's actually kind of fun. You get to work with your users. Do you want to see it this way, this way, this way? Anyhow, one of the things I don't like with interactive grids is we have no declarative way to turn off all these charts. These are wonderful charts, but I defy anyone to build a stock chart with the emp depth table. It just doesn't apply. Even after you read all that help stuff, there's just no min, max, whatever is going to give you a decent chart. So my gripe to the Apex team was, we need an easy way to turn off these charts that don't apply. And sure enough, I found one. So I'm going to just apply the click on this button. It's just a dynamic action that applies some stuff, and I'll show you that in a minute. And so now I've turned off things that really don't apply. That range chart maybe you could do range of salaries in departments or something like that, but you get the idea. And the way I did that is I did the right click, inspect, and what I wanted was the selector. So I ended up getting the selector, and there's lots of different ways to do this now, and even in 21.2, which this is Apex. This is my always free Apex instance, which is now on Apex 21.2. All this does, and you would not do it in a button. I did a hide on jQuery selectors. So I figured out, I just did the right click and looked at the jQuery selectors, and this isn't going to be big enough for you guys to see, but it's li.ninth nth child, 13, 12, 11, they're numbered consecutively. So this was an easy way to do it. This is what I got when I said copy selector. And sure enough, it was enough to limit the charge. So don't forget the charts, don't forget the group by, the detail, the icon views, turn off things that don't apply to users. And so that's it. Standardize on this stuff. Again, if you need the app, simply email me. I'll have it together for you. And now let's take a few minutes and just run through what I just told you. And this is my reminder to make sure I told you all the stuff I wanted you to know. So do things declaratively first. Use the JavaScript to customize where you need to. When you do that, be careful of the combinations and don't hang yourself. I showed you how to turn off the edit and save button. I told you custom code to limit buttons. I showed you how to do the global settings with a custom config file. I showed you how to change the column heading settings and how those work together declaratively and with code. Freeze and no header activate and sort, and no reorder. I showed you that. Now there is a plugin for, as a matter of fact, there's several plugins now for extending the interactive grid. I say customizing the interactive grid toolbar, but beware that the plugin does not standardize. It only makes it easier to customize. So use the plugin if that's what you want to do, but still standardize. This is a look and feel for this set of users across all grids. Keep your end users sane. I showed you how to limit the charts. And again, don't put things in front of the users that they're only going to get frustrated using. They're going to figure out, what am I doing wrong? Read the JavaScript APIs, grid, interactive grid, apex.model, because that's our data. It's fun bedtime reading. Now, I'm not going to go through the rest of these slides, but what's in here for your example is just examples of different pieces of JavaScript that I've used in interactive grids that use the JavaScript API. So interactive grid, copy default toolbar, that gets the default toolbar. Then I'm gonna find the actions one, that's the first area, the search bar and the button. And then I put the show filter dialog there. That's how I added the filter dialog. If you just want to invoke a save via JavaScript, there you go. Model, get the record metadata for the given record ID, usually the clicked on row. And then I'm going to model get value for the given record on this on leave column. If that equals yes, then do a bunch of stuff. There's an example that in there that if in the app that if a user is on leave, it shades out and disables all the rows. Accessing the model, you'll see a lot of examples of that in here. Model.get value record column name. Get selected records, you'll see that a lot. This just loops through and gets the total of all salaries. This is an example in the, and this may be in the grid cookbook or it may be in the grid sample app. Total salary for selected employees. If you can read PL SQL, you can do this amount of JavaScript. It's really not bad. Dynamic action validations, that's a whole topic for another day, but Apex item salary, I get the item and then I do an item.get value to get the value, 2 steps. And then I just say, hey, is a number between 100 and 2000. These next set of screens just show you, this is just showing attributes JavaScript code, and I need to update this slide for later versions. There's a series of, this is a toolbar, this is what it looks like, this is the code, this is where it goes, details on the code, and there's your action. So we don't have to go through all of these, but they're there in your slides. So let's jump to just wrapping up here. Great grids the same way means standardizing, and that's across settings, layouts. Most important, those customizations that a lot of us are going to be scratching our head over, and across all your applications. Just stay sane. Global settings use that JavaScript function in a file. Your file is going to be different than mine. You may say, hey, that delete thing is, and I'm not saying that delete button thing is a way to go. I'm saying that was what worked in one situation for one particular reason. Your configuration will be different. Reference the function, add classes on the grids. Any Apex developer knows how to put a class in the CSS class line. I guarantee it. This just reviews that code that I had showed you before. Sequence number, filter only grid, where the file goes. Then this is where the reference to the function goes, and then you add classes in the CSS classes. And everybody's happy and jumping up and down, and life is wonderful. You should know if there's a mistake in your JavaScript, you get nothing. Your grid disappears, and the first time it happens, you'll go, what? And then you get the little JavaScript pop-up. And in later versions, it actually is, Apex is actually smart about showing you where your errors are. But remember what you did last. As I said many times, I hope you got the idea. This application is not production ready. It does not follow best practices for putting code in files. Please do so when you do customizations. Minimize, read the introduction to the JavaScript API doc, because there's great information in there. Coffee in the morning or bedtime reading. Again, have standards, use them, and stay sane and keep everybody happy. I want to see everybody next year somewhere on the dance floor. So we'll get through this. Hopefully Omicron does not turn out to be a big significant thing. Stay safe out there. I really appreciate you listening in. Again, email me for the app or any questions on Apex. This is just the tip of the iceberg with grids. There is so much to do. I tried to cram as much as I could into 45 minutes. Download the apps, read the documented JavaScript APIs, look at the widget code, play and have fun. This is how you learn doing that stuff. So questions at any time, just call me. And thank you so much for attending. Again, support your sponsors, support your user groups, because you will get more out of it than you expect. Have a great evening, morning, whatever it is where you are. And I do hope to see you all next year, or maybe in June at Case Cup 22. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
CloudDB, shaping your new normal.